All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Mancuso, and I lead communication efforts for the Summer Health Professions Education Program, also known as SHPEP. Tonight, I'm joined by a few ambassadors who are also alum of the program. And tonight, we're going to learn a little bit what SHPEP has to offer.
I do not regret the experience whatsoever. I made lifelong friends, met great mentors, and it further reinforced my desire to attend medical school.
I would say SNDEP truly meant everything to me. I'm currently a fourth-year medical student at the St. Louis University School of Medicine, currently applying into ophthalmology. And without SNDEP, I wouldn't be where I am today.
I tell everyone I don't think I'd be a doctor today if it wasn't for, at that time, MMEP, but now SHPEP.
Well, what is SHPEP? Well, it's a free 6-week summer enrichment program for college freshmen and sophomore students who are interested in the health professions. And our program is truly committed to strengthening the career development of underrepresented and economically disadvantaged students while preparing them for a successful career in the health professions. So students can gain experience in medicine, dentistry, nursing, optometry, pharmacy, physical therapy, and public health. And they can gain this exposure at any one of our 12 program sites listed here on the screen, which are Columbia University, Howard University, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, UAB, UCLA and Charles R. Drew University, University of Florida, University of Iowa, University of Louisville, University of Nebraska Medical Center, UT Health Science Center at Houston, UW or University of Washington, and last but not least, Western University of Health Sciences. So the benefits of our program are students receive housing, meals, a stipend of $1,000 this year, and travel assistance to and from the program site and home. But more importantly, they'll gain guidance from current admissions deans, health professionals, students in health professions programs, and our alumni base of over 30,000 about how to pursue their profession of interest. To be eligible, you must be a high school graduate and currently enrolled as a freshman or sophomore in college, have a minimum overall college GPA of 2.5, be a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, or have been granted DACA status by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And last but not least, you must not have participated in the program previously. We want to make sure every student has an opportunity to experience SHPEP. There are other factors for consideration, and they include identifying with a group that's either racially or ethnically underrepresented in the health professions, or coming from an economically or educationally disadvantaged background, or having demonstrated an interest in issues affecting underserved populations. Now, I want to pause right here and say that our program sites engage in what's called holistic review, which means we're looking at more than just the GPA. We want to see your life. We want to be able to see the distance traveled. So essentially, it's super important for you to submit a compelling personal statement and a very strong letter of recommendation. Now, the activities you'll participate in, if accepted, you'll gain academic enrichment in the basic sciences and math, career development activities such as mock interviewing, developing your CV or resume, learning and study skill workshops, which will help you maximize working in individual and group settings, exposure to clinical settings, which is what's needed to matriculate into a health professions program, workshops in financial planning and health policy, and interprofessional education that addresses effective collaboration across the health professions. Essentially, you'll learn how each of the health professions work collaboratively with one another. Now, I want to take the time to introduce our ambassadors, and I'll just toss it to our first one, Alessio. Alessio, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Tony. All right, everyone. So hi, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Alessio, and I'm a fourth-year student at the University of Florida studying biochemistry. I participated in SHPEP back in 2020 at the University of Florida site, and it was just such a tremendous experience. But I really want to emphasize that after SHPEP ended, those 6 weeks is when I kind of really started seeing the effects of the program. So thankfully, because of some networking and some connections that I've made through SHPEP, I've been able to land post-graduation plans as a clinical research assistant in Boston. So I'm really excited to pursue those plans after my graduation. And I'm really excited to also get to know some of you today and hopefully help you out in your applications with SHPEP.
Thank you for that, Alessio. Simran, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Simran Athwal. I'm a fourth year right now currently at UCLA, majoring in biology with a double minor in global health and society and genetics. I'll be graduating in December, so almost there. I participated in SHPEP in 2020 as well at University of Washington. So it was, I believe, all virtual, if I remember correctly. And I would say by joining SHPEP, I was very lost. I'm a first-gen student, so joining the program, I really wanted to make sure that I was diving into a career pathway that was going to be meant for me in the long run. So for me, I was torn between going to law school and going to medical school. So I really wanted to make sure that I was making the right decision. So that's the reason why I wanted to join SHPEP, and that's the reason why I did ultimately. And then through, as Alessio mentioned, there's so many mentorship guidance that's given through SHPEP, and also so many resources, even virtually. I've received a lot of guidance and support, and I still continue to do so. And once I graduate in December, my future goals are to take the MCAT. I have not taken that yet, and then also I'll be a standardized patient back home in Fresno, California.
Thank you for that, Simran. And you know what? It's really great to hear that, you were trying to decide between two really different professions, and ultimately, SHPEP helped you nail down what you ultimately wanted to do. So thank you for that. Yasmin, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi guys, my name's Yasmin. I'm currently a first-year medical student at UTMB, but I did my program in 2020 at UAB, also virtually. And I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. So when I did the program, it really just made me even more excited to apply. And even though we were virtual, all of my classmates made a group me, so it was a really nice community too. And then my coordinators also helped me apply to med school when the time came. So yeah, if you have any questions about being a medical student or SHPEP in general, I did do it online, but I feel like the experiences kind of overlap.
Thank you. And when Yasmin actually did the program, this is during the height of COVID. So unfortunately, we had to pivot from an in-person experience to a virtual experience. But right now we're a hybrid experience where, some sites are implementing 2 weeks virtual, 4 weeks in person, or the other way around, vice versa. So definitely, we've adapted with the times, and we're trying to really meet students where they are, because there are benefits ultimately to virtual and in person. Omar, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Omar Alzir. I have recently graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in biochemistry. I have participated in SHPEP in 2020, back when COVID was just starting, and I did it at UCLA, David Geffen School of Medicine, and Charles R. Drew University back in my first year of college. Ever since, I have participated in numerous pre-medical, pre-health experiences. So SHPEP kind of introduced me to wide array of opportunities and educated me. And I participated in UCLA, Charles Drew University. By the way, just Charles Drew University, they just opened their own College of Medicine, and it's in the application around 2 days ago. So if you need any help in the application process, I just applied this year, so please reach out to me.
Thank you for offering all the help, Omar. And I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for you. I am gonna ask the first question to Simran. Simran, I want I know you said it a little bit earlier that you were deciding between two professions. and you ultimately landed on medicine, if I'm not mistaken. I want to hear a little bit more about that. Why did you choose medicine?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, when I was in high school, I did a lot of shadowing experience and like just experience in general pertaining to both fields. So I've always dreamt of like being in one or the other for a very long time. As I mentioned before, I was first gen, so I really didn't have a lot of support or guidance from like, friends or relatives or family members because nobody really knew anything. They didn't know what was expected to go into law school and what was expected to be in medical school. And then when I came to UCLA, I actually chose UCLA because of that reason, was because I was like, okay, you know what, UCLA is really known for law school and for medical school. They do have a lot of resources here as well as, for undergraduate students. So I was like, at least, it will give me more of like a buffer period to be able to decide what pathway to pursue. And when I came here as a freshman, this is like just a little going off of like what you mentioned, but I was like very lost, confused at a very big university. I came from a very small town, by the way, called Carruthers. I don't know if you all know where that is. It's near Fresno. So I came from Carruthers, went to UCLA, came here, and I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So my fall quarter freshman year, I just attended classes and basically came into my dorm, and that's pretty much it. Like, did not explore whatsoever. And then I eventually found out about SHPEP my second year from friends that I made through a cultural organization here on campus called Sixth Student Association. That's the only organization that I joined just because I knew that I wanted to be able to be close with my community. So they told me about this and they're like, well, Simran, like you're still lost, you're a second year, you need to figure this out. So why not join SHPEP and see if like medical school is like really best fitted for you? And that's when I'm like, okay, you know what, let me try joining this. So I applied and I got in at University of Washington. It was virtual, so I was still back home in Fresno, but I just received a lot of support. Even though UCLA has a lot of resources here, SHPEP on its own has a lot of resources that are really pertaining to medicine. They gave me 2 mentors. I still keep in touch with them and they still help me. Again, as I mentioned before, I'm going to start studying for the MCAT, taking that in March. And then after that, I'm going to be applying to medical school. So just receiving support from them on that and like, hopping on Zoom calls just to let them know, like, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing. Like, that just means a lot to me because I didn't really have anybody like that before in high school or like even in the beginning of my journey at UCLA. So through that, like it was great. And then for law school, I just left from that transition process because I wanted to be more in a diverse community and be able to like for me personally, I love community service and I love giving back. So I wanted to have like something in resemblance to that and like being in a hospital setting, being able to like have that patient care interaction and stuff like that. That meant a lot to me. And I wanted to make sure that I was still continuing that, in the long run. So for now, I really am interested in ophthalmology. So hopefully crossing my fingers, I will be pursuing that in the long run as well.
Very exciting. And you know what? I'm glad that you were able to share that with us because I think for a lot of SHPEP scholars, I think they get confused as far as like, what's right for me. And I think that's just not just scholars, but anyone in general, especially if it's your first time going to college and it's, you're the first person in your family to go to college. So I definitely resonate with that and I definitely understand. I want to ask this question to Alessio. Alessio, what is your major in your undergraduate career and why did you choose it? And does it relate to what you ultimately want to achieve?
So I'm majoring in biochemistry here at UF. And to be completely honest with you, Tony, the main reason why I decided to major in that was because I remember my freshman year of high school, I was taking biology and I knew that my sophomore year, I would start taking chemistry. And for some reason, that subject just always kind of, I don't know, I was always very inclined to learning more about it just because I feel like there's so much that chemistry can teach you, not just regarding science, but like just critical thinking as well. So once I actually graduated from high school and I entered college, I pretty much just stuck with that major since my freshman year. And, at the same time, a lot of the classes that I had to take for that major also happened to align with a lot of the prerequisites for medical school. So this was your biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry, physics. So it kind of was nice to have that overlap between the courses for my major and the courses that I would need to take for medical school. So I feel like it allowed me to build a really good foundation, at least for studying for the MCAT now that I'm in this stage. But yeah, overall, it's been a pretty great experience, and I am very happy with the major that I chose, to be completely honest with you.
Thanks, Alessio. And I definitely hear you on that. As we start thinking about, majors and things like that, I want to know a little bit about, you know, I would say like, how'd you learn about the program too? And, if you can speak to that right now, Alessio, that would be great.
Absolutely. So I actually learned about the program through some independent research. Um, Once I started my freshman year here at UF, I was kind of already thinking of things that I could be doing over the summer, just because I feel like I want to keep myself busy at times, especially that summer. Obviously we weren't expecting a whole pandemic to happen in the fall of 2019 for the next semester, but things just sometimes don't work out the way you plan them. But I did happen to stumble upon SHPEP just again through independent research. And I actually happened to reach out to some people that I found out had participated in SHPEP at UF beforehand. So I reached out to them and we had some conversations, and they told me that they had participated in the program 2 years ago and where they were at now. And they told me of everything SHPEP did from them in terms of preparation for their MCAT exams, kind of advice from deans of admissions for medical schools on how to best craft their application, and just also finding out of the different fields of healthcare, right? I mean, I know some of the students or alumni that I had spoken to were originally intending to pursue a career in medicine. However, after they participated in SHPP, they found that, for example, being a physician's assistant would align much more with their career goals as opposed to medicine. So I think it's really a good thing to keep an open mind before going into the program. You may be dead set in one pathway, but you really just might surprise yourself upon learning of the other healthcare pathways that one can pursue and all they have to offer, because you end up learning that medicine really is teamwork. So overall, that kind of experience that these students told me they had really made me feel inclined to apply. So I did some more digging. I learned about the requirements that I needed. And, I got my letter of recommendation. I wrote my personal statement and had people review it for me just to make sure it was really crafted to the best of my ability before I submitted the application. And it all happened to work out. And now I'm very happy to be sitting here sharing my experience with you all as well.
Thank you so much, Alessio. And, speaking about experiences, I think one of the biggest things is finding out what made somebody apply. So Yasmin, I'd love to hear what made you apply. And I'd like to hear a little bit about the SHPEP instructors. Like, how were they like?
So I actually found out about it through my biology TA, and she was really raving about the program and saying it was amazing and stuff. So I thought I would apply too, because I figured it was free and everything, and it's a good program to, figure out if I wanted to go to medical school and like how that would work, and just to get more experience in general. So then when I did apply and got into the program, it was online for me, but it still felt like the community, it was the first year that it was online. So everybody was kind of turning to an online format and figuring out Zoom and that kind of stuff. But it never felt unorganized to me, because our class like came up with a group me for ourselves and we would talk in it. And actually we kind of still do talk in it. And then the course instructors always made themselves available. Like they gave us their emails, of course, and said like, don't hesitate to reach out. Really everyone like on the staff was there to help you, and you felt comfortable reaching out to them.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's amazing, and I'm glad to hear about your specific experience. I want to hear a little bit about your med school experience too. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that and how that's going?
Sure, yeah. So I started in July, and I think it's going pretty well. I chose the school because it's close to home. So I'm like an hour and a half away from my family, which is nice too, because I've always relied on my family support as well. So just having that kind of connection. And then I've made friends here too at medical school. Everyone's really nice and supportive. So I've been having a good experience so far. And then I feel like the academics from medical school and SHPEP have lined up as well, because we are going through like basic sciences and anatomy and stuff like that all over again. So I do have the foundation of it from SHPEP as well.
Thanks for that, Yasmin. Omar, I'd like to hear a little bit about your experience, but specifically the shadowing experiences and things like that and the clinical stuff. Do you mind telling the audience a little bit about what your experience was like in SHPEP?
Yeah, hi. So in SHPEP, there were a lot of different experiences that and opportunities that are going to get exposed to, whether stimulations, whether sessions, whether shadowing, and a lot of times you find yourself seeing like in a session where a doctor or a dentist would go through the procedure and the steps, and you'd be sometimes in evaluating cases, like in a small group and evaluating a patient case, but more particularly like shadowing and research. I found myself heavily involved. I'm actually like doing shadowing. I'm actually doing research. I remember one time there was a project where we were basically doing like something similar to undergraduate research. We were researching health disparities in the US, and each small group had to come with its own project. And that project just is very beneficial for me because it gave me exposure to the health disparities we're facing and how we as future health workers can work towards solving those issues. So HPP overall gives you in-depth experiences that it's I think it's very hard to get otherwise. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing about your experience, Omar. The next question I'd like to ask to Simran. Simran, during the program, how was the mentorship like? And could you describe like the relationship between faculty and students? And just on a personal tip, do you currently have a mentor, and how did you find that person?
Yeah, I think I touched upon this a little bit when I was speaking about my story of being in SHPEP and like being at UCLA. But for University of Washington, like it was virtual, and we met every single day from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, because we had the academic enrichment classes that we had to take, which includes biochem, and I believe population health was one of them, and I forgot the fourth one, but there was 4 classes in total. And then we also had like workshops, like financial literacy workshops, and other ones that would, pop up here and there. And then we also met with our pathway. So you were part of, I believe there were 3 pathways at University of Washington, and you were part of either of them. I think one was dentistry, the other one was public health, and the third one was medicine. And I was part of medicine. So we would meet with the students, and then also the mentor of that specific pathway program. And that, consisted of like, getting to know one another. That was really fun. I think that was like the best part, because we would be able to like mingle with one another, chit chat, and then also just to get to know, what we're going to be doing in the long run. So what our plans were, what it consisted of. And I think that's how the group meets came into play. We also have a Slack. So we created 2 because we wanted to be able to like we had GroupMe for just medicine, and then we had Slack for everyone. So we're all in Slack all together. So if we have questions about like, I don't know, if I want to do dentistry, if I change pathways, and I can reach out to folks who have done that before. And in terms of faculty, they're amazing. They were wonderful. There was a lot of extensions that were given as well. So it's like a very flexible program. It's not like very strict. I know it can sound a little bit intimidating. I was intimidated when I first entered, because I was like, oh shoot, like I'm not the best in biochem. Like I don't know how great I'm going to be doing in those classes, but I promise you it is truly worthwhile. And I would for sure say that I didn't take biochem when I took SHPEP. So I took it after I took when I was like at the part of SHPEP program. So I took it my junior year, and I was not struggling as much as I could have if I didn't take SHPEP, because they do really go through like the foundations with you, just to give you like a glimpse of like what to expect. And then also I think it's really worthwhile if you are going to be like taking the MCAT a little earlier than I am. But in regards to your second question, finding a mentor, I did actually find a mentor. I found two. I'm very close to one of them because she is right now currently in medical school. So she is giving me a lot of like the insights of like what to expect from that, how to go about my application, because I have started writing my personal statement. So letting me know about that. And then also like just helping me, like editing it for me, and like also hopping on Zoom calls, as I mentioned before too. And those hopping on Zoom calls are more of like just knowing like where I am at, and like just, you know, getting a little scoop of like when I'm graduating, what I'm expecting to do type of thing. Just like, you know, like just things that you would talk to a friend with. And then the second one is actually in dental school. So I found through the dental pathway. I wasn't part of that, but she was so down to earth and she resonated with me so much. So I was like, you know what, let me just get your contact info. And we talk once in a while. She is pretty busy, but I met both of them through SHPEP, and I still continue to talk to them as a fourth year at UCLA. So you will for sure make a lot of connections.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think the SHPEP experience teaches students how to network, you know, and that's really invaluable, those tips, in order to really, you know, be able to speak your mind and be able to ask for help. Because I think for some of us that come from underrepresented backgrounds, it's really hard for us to do, right? So I definitely resonate with what you're saying, Simran. I have a question just for anyone in general on the board, right? You know, our number one referral source for SHPEP is it's pre-health advisors, right? They've always been a very strong advocate for us regarding SHPEP. I'm wondering, how did each of you, or for her, you know, if you built a great relationship with them, especially, how did you go about building that relationship with your pre-health advisor?
So I can take this question if you guys would like. So actually the pre-health, well, before SHPP, I had actually never met with any pre-health advisors at UF. I had kind of heard this, I don't know, it seemed like almost everyone thought they weren't very helpful. But after SHPP and when I actually became an ambassador, I got the chance to connect with some of the pre-health advisors. And one of them here at UF, the first time I spoke with her, she told me, I love this program because I'm so passionate about helping first gen students. I am first gen myself, and I want to do anything I can to really facilitate, you know, your pathway that you have towards your, you know, career goals, graduate school, whatever it may be. So after meeting with her for that first time, we kind of worked along, okay, how are we going to send these messages to students? Are we going to use a mass pre-health listserv? Are we going to reach out to different student organizations? Are we going to ask professors to send out messages about it? So there are many different avenues that you can tackle, but hit as many as you can, I would say. If there's a pre-health listserv, send out an announcement about the application there. Are there professors that are willing to also share this message? Good, contact them. And the pre-health advisors, they have all the tools and resources you need to get as connected as you can throughout your campus. Very recently, actually, this past Monday, me and one of the other SHPP ambassadors here at UF were able to hold a presentation at the Academic Advising Center about SHPP. And we did have a pretty good turnout. It was around 30, 40 students where we just spoke about our experience with SHPP, what they can possibly gain from it, and how they can stay in touch with their ambassadors throughout the application cycle. So pre-health advisors really are going to be kind of one of the main tools that colleges and universities can use for, you know, disseminating information about SHPP and really raising awareness about it throughout the campus.
Omar, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to add to that question. So I agree with what Alicia said, and I personally think that sometimes, and this applies not to just getting a lot of recommendation for SHPEP, but rather than getting a lot of recommendation for anything in healthcare in general. For when you apply to grad schools, it's going to be the same principle. And I think the thing about a lot of recommendation is try to make it as personalized as possible. So when you ask a pre-health advisor or a professor or whomever it is to write you a lot of recommendation, before you do that, try to kind of let them know who you are. Try to build a personal connection with them, rather than getting a basic letter that might that many other students can simply get almost the exact same letter, but rather build a connection. So if you're getting it from a professor, I suggest you attend their office hours. I suggest you have discussions with them. If you're getting it from someone who is monitoring you at an activity you like, for example, a research project or an extracurricular activity, try to get it to have a letter that is specific to you, a letter that describes you, who you are. And so just in general, try to build a basic, a personal connection with you, with whoever is writing a letter of recommendation for you.
Thanks for sharing that. And, you know, I see a couple of questions in the Q&A, and then, you know, I think there's like 4 or 5 of them, and they're all talking about, you know, as far as housing, as far as SHPEP, you know, is dorming required? Can you commute? I think those questions are best suited for the program sites, to be very frank. You know, it depends on ultimately which site you're going to. I wish there was a cookie cutter answer that I could give you, but, you know, it really does just depend on the site. So I would recommend contacting those program sites. If you go to our website, shpep.org, you'll be able to go to the Our School section, and then from there, you can actually see their contact information on that screen. So I highly recommend that you check that out. You know, to pivot a little bit too, right, as we go through these questions, I'm thinking about just diversity in itself, right? And I actually want each of you to answer this question. Why is it important to diversify the health professions? We can kind of go around. So I'll since Omar has his hand up already, I'll start with him, and then I'll popcorn everywhere else.
Yeah, hi. So I think it's important to diversify healthcare is because we are serving a population that has a lot of diversity, and a lot of patients have different backgrounds, and sometimes treatment is not just prescribing medications, rather than it's building a personal trust with your patients that they can actually reveal to you their lifestyle, their commitment to the medication. So it's important to be able to relate to them, and sometimes it's only possible by having more diversity within healthcare providers themselves. And I think it's important to have healthcare providers who can speak multiple languages, who can speak out to more patients and build natural connection with them.
Thanks for that, Omar. Yasmin, would you like to take a crack at that one?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Omar said. I mean, he's right, of course. I also think that learning about different cultures is so cool. Like, just learning from your classmates and them sharing like a piece of themselves with you, because when you go into clinic, patients are going to share a piece of themselves with you as well, and they're going to be in their most vulnerable state, like when they're sick and they're opening up to you. So you want to be able to understand them and where they're coming from, and there are certain like cultural nuances that you should be aware of in general, or just know about or have in your back pocket, basically. And if you can make a patient feel more welcome just by learning a thing or two about their culture, or just being more in tune with diversity, I feel like that's a step that's, as health providers, you should be taking that step.
Thanks for that. Simran, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, for sure. I would echo with what both of them have said, but also I think in regards to like making healthcare more diversified, I think it's really important to like be accommodating. And I think that ties back to what they both mentioned of just knowing like the cultural lifestyles, I know a lot of minority communities really emphasize integrative medicine. So like just understanding what that concept entails. There are other things too, like if you do a simple Google search of like pediatricians or doctors, like what usually pops up is woman and being pediatricians, or just white male figures being doctors. You don't really necessarily see a lot of people of color when you do a simple Google search. So things like that, there's also a lot of stereotypes that still exist within healthcare, and trying to simplify that as much as possible. And I think it's really important to be able to extend your knowledge outside of just the realms of like learning the basics of medicine, and trying to figure out, as both of them have mentioned, like, what do other people do that is like, like I know like a lot of my own family members don't really understand hypertension, even though we all have high blood pressures. And they love to do like, just I believe my mom, like what she does for her high blood pressure is like soak her feet in water. So that's like a thing that, a lot of people have done. I know a lot of people aren't really familiar with that, but just knowing those type of lifestyles and going off of that versus if you have somebody like that, for instance, like if you have my mom as a patient, you don't want to necessarily tell her that, you have to take so-and-so medication because it's required, because most likely she's not going to be taking it because she's not used to it. So just knowing like things like that would be really helpful in the long run, when you're a physician of whatever sort you're going to be.
Alessio, you can go on ahead and chime in.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. So I think all of them, Omar, Yasmin, and Simran, you all touched on some amazing points that I would really like to emphasize again, but using an example. So here in Gainesville, we have a network of free clinics known as the Equal Access Clinic Network. And the primary patients that we see are ones that are uninsured. So they can't afford medical care. They can't go to urgent care, emergency rooms, anything of this sort, because simply they might get turned away. And it so happens that here in Gainesville, the majority of patients who do happen to be uninsured are ones that don't speak English. So these are primarily Spanish speakers. The only issue is that at our clinic and almost every other hospital in Gainesville, there's a severe lack of Spanish speakers. So typically, once the patient comes into the clinic, we find out that they're only Spanish speaking. If there is a medical student, a physician, a nurse, anyone that sees that individual that doesn't speak Spanish, they have to get on the phone with a phone interpreter service, right? And this just really depersonalizes the entire interaction that a medical professional is having with the patient. Typically, the two parties are going to be speaking over one another. There's a lot of interruption that goes on, and very important medical information is not transmitted correctly from one party to another. So what happens? The patient doesn't fully understand the prescription that was given to them or why they're taking the medication that they were prescribed. And really, I've been able to intervene in this by serving as a Spanish medical interpreter at that clinic. And once I walk into that room and I say hi to the patient in Spanish, I can instantly see their entire demeanor change. Their attitude just becomes so much more positive because they know that there's someone in that room with them that will be able to advocate for their health in a good manner, right? So these patients are now able to open up to you so much more about their social history, their health history, so many of the strides that they've been through to get here to the United States mainly. I know a lot of patients that left Venezuela seeking refuge here in the United States and are uninsured. One time we even had a patient we had to send from the clinic to the emergency room, and then they were sent back to us because there was no one at the emergency room that could interpret for them. So it's really evident that there needs to be some sort of change or greater representation of many cultures and languages in medicine, especially because it is a team effort and we want to be able to advocate for the patients to the best of our ability. But how can we do that if we don't have the proper resources for them? So that really is kind of why I think it's so important to have really, I guess, a good amount of diversity in medicine, especially nowadays.
Thanks for that, Alessio. Omar, did you have anything to add?
Yeah. I'd like to add something, a point that Alicia briefly touched on, and I think it's important to diversify healthcare is a lot of underserved minorities and immigrant communities. They don't have enough education about healthcare resources they actually can access here in the US, and having someone from their own community who can help direct them, help give them advice is crucial. And I think because, like, for example, personally, I attend health fairs, community health fairs, and I realized that a lot of the populations we are serving are unaware of the healthcare resources. Some of them don't even know how to get an affordable insurance or what assistance programs there are, and simply just they turn away from healthcare. But rather, when they see that someone they can speak to, someone they can access from their own community, help direct them, help give them advice in where to do it, I think that's crucial. And I think it's also important for the younger generations in those communities, when they see someone from their own or community, someone who they have personal connection with in healthcare, they are more encouraged to enter healthcare and help even diversify healthcare even more. I personally felt like more confident entering a field knowing that I know someone there. On the other hand, when I don't see anyone from my community or someone I could personally connect to, I always had self-doubt and whatsoever. So I think it's important to diversify healthcare.
Thanks for that, Omar. And I have a question just in general as far as, application preparation. How did each of you build a robust application for SHPEP? But also for those of you who have, progressed into, health professions programs, medical school and things like that, or have already applied, how have some of those translated, the themes from the SHPEP application to your current application? I'll go on ahead and start with Yasmin and work our way around.
I think what's important to remember when you're building an application is you're not trying to do a little bit of everything. You're trying to figure out what's important to you and just work in that field, and then maybe get leadership positions in that field and, learn more about it. Like, for example, I became a leader in my scholarship organization. I became really involved in it, just volunteered, mentored other people, that kind of stuff. When I started doing SHPEP, I got involved in it as well. I became an ambassador. And then when you get to the point where you're doing interviews for graduate school or something, and you talk about this kind of stuff, and interview people see how passionate you are and how much you care about it, and that tells them a little bit more about yourself, more than you could tell like in a short answer or on paper or something, because this is something that you've been actively working toward for at least 4 years or longer, so it's obviously important to you. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind. You don't have to be the best at everything. You could just be good at a couple of things, and then just make sure that you really enjoy those things or want to learn more about them to see if you enjoy them.
Thanks for that, Yasmin. Simran, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. In regards to like applications, like when I was applying to SHPEP, which has been a while, it's been 2 years, I don't remember everything, but I would say for sure, like applications are very time consuming. You have to sit down and actually start writing things, and and it's hard to write about yourself for sure. I always struggle with that because I feel like I'm not the best person when it comes to just experiences and like just what I do on a daily life. But I promise you, like when you're writing those essays, they do really come in handy in the long run as well, when like you're applying for medical school, whatever pathway you're applying to, because then you know exactly who you are as an individual. For me, I struggled with the why medicine portion. And as I mentioned before, I'm like starting to write my personal statement. So for the why medicine, like I just didn't know exactly why I wanted to pursue medical school. I knew like the little small things like community service, love that. I love patient interactions. I love being able to be in a hospital setting, and that's all through experiences, but I just didn't feel like that was like a strong why medicine. So being able to like go through so many applications, not just SHPEP, but like just being at UCLA here, you have to apply to everything. Like you have to apply to be in organizations, you have to apply to be in programs, you have to apply to for a job. So essentially, like I've applied to so many things that now I just get a gist of like what is expected. And then also for me, it just I think makes me a stronger applicant just because I've been through so much in regards to like applying to so many things. So highly recommend that, when you're applying, don't take it as if, oh my goodness, like this is going to be very time consuming, I don't want to do it. I know a lot of my friends don't apply to things because they just feel like it's going to be time consuming, they don't want to go through the process. But I promise you, like when you do start applying, and you're going to see a trend, like improvement within yourself in your writing, like you as an individual, like where you're at. And I think that really helps you, especially for interviews, because interviews essentially like entail talking about yourself, letting the other person know who you are. And I think I've just grown a lot, like just through application processes, like just applying. And then another thing is, I know Yasmin mentioned about how big, quality over quantity really matters. And I think that really does resonate with me as well. When I came in as a freshman, as I mentioned before, I didn't really apply to things other than like one cultural organization that I was a part of. And then afterwards, imposter syndrome hit me very hard because here at UCLA, everybody's so diverse. Everybody's like, at least in something, like they're very involved at UCL, like very well involved individuals. And I thought that I wasn't doing anything. So I started getting involved in so many things. I think there was a time where I was involved in 16 different organizations. It was very stressful. Don't recommend, because when it comes to like talking about yourself, you're going to really have a hard time. If you can't really, you can mention the fact that you were involved in 16 orgs, but what did you do within those 16 orgs? Did you really make an impact? I think it really comes down to the fact that was there like a positive change within yourself or within the organization that you contributed to? And you really want to make sure that you can answer that question pertaining to anything that you've been involved in throughout your undergraduate experience or whatever experience you've been in. So I just wanted to give like those two advices for you all when you're, applying or when you're getting involved in things.
Thank you for that, Simran. And, I definitely gonna have a follow-up question for you and just for everyone else, because being involved in a lot, it can cause burnout too, right? Just personally, and I think, I'd love to, after we ask this question, I definitely would love to hear the panelists' thoughts on, how to avoid that and still be that standout applicant throughout this process, right? But Alessio, I'd love to hear your thoughts about, the same application preparation question we've been going through.
Yeah, so I know a lot of you here are going to be in the same shoes that I was, because I applied to SHPEP as a freshman. And I know that applying to SHPEP as a freshman can be such an intimidating task because you reflect on your very brief college journey so far of around 3-4 months. And you're like, well, it's only been almost one semester, but I haven't really done much so far. You can only get so involved as a freshman just because you're still figuring out so many things. You're getting your feet in the ground in college. You've moved away from home. Everything is so different. So it can be a bit intimidating to apply, especially as a freshman, because you may feel like you're not very involved yet. You may feel like you don't know the proper person to ask for a letter of rec yet. So it's a lot of moving parts that you certainly have to figure out, but definitely take your time, especially when crafting your personal statement. You don't have to focus so much on, oh my God, I need to have done all of these things in college so far, and I'm going to get rejected because I haven't been volunteering in 3 different orgs and that. Focus more on your own story, right? I want to echo the message that the previous panelists have said. Focus on your story. What led you to be here today where you are, right? What obstacles have you faced in your life that have provided a lot of growth, not only personal, but also professional. So focus on those key aspects of yourself that you can really present to whoever is reading your application so that they feel some sort of genuine connection with you when they're reading your personal statement, your letter of recommendation, your activities, all of those things. And Tony, as for your other question about burnout, I would definitely say try to develop some habits early on, whether it be keeping yourself physically active, playing music, cooking. Just find those hobbies that you really enjoy to spend some free time on. And don't overpack your schedule. I know, especially like Simran mentioned, imposter syndrome is a very real threat throughout all of undergrad. And sometimes it may seem like your classmates are involved in 50,000 different student organizations and they're just doing so much, and you're sitting here feeling like you're doing nothing. You're definitely doing something. So try not to compare yourself so much either, because that's definitely one of the things that can primarily contribute to burnout. And again, don't overpack your schedule. Be realistic with how much you can handle in one semester, and always prioritize your classes, because that's ultimately what's going to have to come first.
Thanks for that, Alessio. And Omar, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, thanks to my colleagues, Simran, Alicia, and Yasmin. They covered most of the ones I wanted to talk about. But I think one thing that is a crucial tip that's going to help you in applications, no matter what they are, is always get a head start. It's never too early to get started. Like, for example, when I applied to med school, like I had my personal statement draft like 6 months before the application opens. Same with SHPEP. I really was working towards it. Like, even though the application is still in November, I was working back in September. I don't think it just applies to anything when you apply to anything, because trust me, as a pre-health student, things arise and you get busy towards the application season most of the time. So it's helpful to get a head start.
Thanks for that, Omar. Simran, I'd like to hear a little bit about you and how you were able to navigate and hopefully avoid burnout. And on top of that, you mentioned the term imposter syndrome. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is imposter syndrome? So that the audience understands, the gravity of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think Alessio mentioned this already too, but essentially what imposter syndrome is when you feel like you're not doing much, when you also compare yourself to other people surrounding you at UCLA, and then you overthink that, oh, you know, if they're involved in like so and so and so, I'm only involved in one org and like taking classes, like why is this, like let me just add things on my plate, without realizing like, you know, maybe you can't really handle all of that, like it's going to be too much, and like that's where, you know, what Alessio mentioned, like burnout comes into play. For me at UCLA, I think a lot of students go through this. It's not just like, you know, just specifically at UCLA, but being here, I've noticed a lot, like especially freshmen and sophomores who are coming in now. They also talk about imposter syndrome, and I'm a fourth year now. So I always love to let them know, like, I promise you, it is not worth it to get involved in so many things, just because you feel like your friend is doing a lot and you have to do a lot. A lot of students also make a, I would say like it's a wrong decision, or they get involved in so many things, but they don't necessarily know that if they're passionate about it or not, which is like what I did. I joined things just because I felt like, okay, I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't necessarily thinking about organizations from the lens of, oh, do I really want to do this for 4 years at UCLA? Am I passionate about this type of work? Will this be something that I will be using, you know, as a physician or whatever it may be? Like, I really didn't think a lot when I was joining. I just joined for the purpose of joining because a lot of my friends were joining different organizations. For sure, yes, I was very burned out. There were moments where I would just be very overwhelmed. I believe my beginning of my sophomore year is like when it really affected me, was because my fall quarter, so UCLA is on a quarter system, so we have 3 quarters. We have fall, winter, and spring. Fall quarter is when I started joining organizations. Winter quarter is actually considered to be like the very hard, like it's considered to be like the difficult quarter at UCLA, just because like the seasonal change happens, gloomy days, you know, you're just inside your dorm majority of the time. And a lot of students take hard classes during that time as well. So during winter quarter, because I was involved in so many things, I still have. So again, just to keep in mind that when you're involved in things, you have tasks that you have to complete. It's not just attending general meetings, attending board meetings. Like, you have certain things that you have to do, especially if you have a leadership position, which I did for majority of organizations. So I had all of that work to do, along with taking 22 units. So I was taking a lot of units during winter quarter as well. That was the most difficult quarter throughout my 4 years at UCLA. I struggled a lot. There were moments where I would cry in my room. I would be like, what am I doing? And then on top of that, if I heard a friend tell me that they got a research opportunity, then I would be like, wait, Simran, like, you're not doing any research opportunities. What are you doing? You're just involved in organizations. And then I would add more onto my plate. So it's just like, I don't know, it was just a constant, like, a feedback loop. You know, I was still going back to the same thing, which was applying to things over and over again, not realizing that's really affecting my academics, but also my mental health as well. And I promise you, I did not have time to socialize during that quarter at all. My friends would text me, they would be like, oh, Simran, do you want to hang out? I never would go because I just wouldn't have the time. So that really affected me. This quarter compared to like that quarter, my sophomore year, is so much different because I'm not involved in so many things. 2, I'm only involved in things that I'm passionate about. 3, I'm not taking as many units as well, just because it's my last quarter, but also I do spare time to, like, you know, socialize. And again, don't take this in a wrong way as well. We're like, oh yeah, college is all about socializing. Yes, it is, but to a certain extent. You really want to have that work-life balance as well. So make sure that you also prioritize classes. You're involved, but you also do have time to, like, you know, go out with your friends once in a while, to go get like Diddy Rees or something like that. Because I didn't do that. And I think not being able to get outside of like my little, you know, room area, because I was so overwhelmed with like other things, and not being able to see people on a regular basis, because a lot of like the board meetings, general meetings also happen on Zoom. So I was like always on my computer 24/7. So you just want to make sure that you really have like a balance in your life, especially as a college student, because it can get very overwhelming very, very quick. And I do also resonate with Omar when he mentioned the fact that, you know, as a pre-med student, like, you just don't know what's going to come next. Every day looks very different. And, you know, there's things that could be added onto your schedule, can be dropped, whatever, rescheduled. So you just want to be aware of, like, you know, what you're getting involved in. And also just try to get involved in things that you're really, like, I can't emphasize this enough. Be involved in things that you're passionate about. Don't just get involved just because your friend is either involved in it, or because you feel like you're pressured to, just because you feel like you're not doing much. So hopefully that answers your question, Tony.
No, and it really does. And, you know, thank you for the realness. I mean, I think that's the only way I could say that, because honestly, it's the truth. A lot of pre-med students, unfortunately, they do get burnt out, and, we need to be able to hear these stories so like that we can learn how to combat it. If I were to give just a little bit of advice just for anyone listening, I would say learn to prioritize and learn to say no. Those are learning to say no is the big one though, right? Like that's the one that I think we all struggle with as people just in general, because we want to make sure that, I want to go to my sister's birthday, or I want to go, you know what I mean? You want to make your family happy. You want to make your friends happy. And then balancing all that on top of the workload, it could become overwhelming. I also want to touch a little bit on imposter syndrome too. A part of imposter syndrome, I is the sense of not belonging and feeling like, at the same time when you're around your peers, you're doing all this work, it just kind of feels like, wow, like I really just don't know, like if I belong here. It like in other words, like you have to wish to be there, if that makes any sense, right? I know that's rough for a lot of students, and when they go through it, and that's just not students, that's just anyone in general, in professional careers and things like that. There are moments that, hey, even me, that I'll be like, hey, maybe I don't belong here, and, I have to sometimes take a step back and understand that, I'm, like what the cool kids say, I'm him, so definitely I need to understand that and really take that in and understand that, if I'm hired for a job, if I was asked to do something, I know for a fact I'm going to do my best on it. And as long as I know that, then I'm in a really good situation. What I also would like to talk about too, just to kind of pivot a little bit, is letters of recommendation. And specifically, who did you ask to write your letter of recommendation? And, just a fun question after that, are you still in contact with that person? We can, I'll actually go to Omar and then work our way around.
Yeah, hi. So I recall from my letter of recommendation for SHPEP, I'm not sure all the letters asked, but I remember one letter, and I think I'm gonna incorporate many of my answers today. Is that I knew I'm gonna apply to SHPEP because I already read it and got enough exposure about the program. So knowing that I have to get a strong letter of recommendation, I was already building my connection with my organic chemistry back then professor. When I immediately started the quarter, I was already building that connection because I knew that I'm going to ask them for a letter of recommendation. So I wanted to build a personal connection. I was going to their office hours. I was asking a lot of questions after class, and I think that just give me a special letter that is personalized rather than just a generic basic letter. And I still am in contact with that professor. In fact, I asked him also to write a letter for me in my med school application. Hopefully this time it works as well.
Thanks for that. Yasmin, would you mind taking a crack at this answer? I understand you have a meeting that you're about to head to and things like that. But if you mind answering this as succinctly as possible, that would be great.
Yeah. So for my letter of recommendation for SHPEP, I think I got it. I got it. Don't speak with him anymore. But I kind of just reached out to him and said, hey, would you feel comfortable writing me a letter of recommendation? What kind of things would you put in it? Or here's a little bit about me. So when you go up to them, just make sure they know you and they would write you a good letter of recommendation. Or even if you're writing an email, you can attach your resume to it. Or if you meet them in person, you could say do you feel comfortable writing this letter of recommendation? Just basically make sure it's a good one, or find somebody else to write it for you.
Thank you, Yasmin. I really appreciate you. And, thank you for joining us this evening. I know you have to run to another meeting. I'll definitely make sure that I'll share your email address with the crowd. Okay. Have a good one.
Okay. Thanks. Bye, guys. Feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Simran, would you like taking a stab at that one?
Yes. So I reached out to Professor Riley at UCLA. She's a Chem 14CL professor, my lab professor. And she's amazing. attended her office hours, as Omar mentioned. That's how I got to know. I believe that's the easiest way to get to know your professors, attend office hours. Highly recommend them. A lot of people don't utilize office hours, to be honest. So make sure if you really want to get to know the professor outside of like classes, like attend office hours. But we chit-chatted, and our topics were dogs and jewelry, because I love jewelry. I don't know if you all noticed that. And that's literally what we talked about. And then from there, office hours actually consisted of like just talking about personal things like going on in family, like what I'm doing, what my goals are, what I'm involved in, things like that. And I reached out to her because she knew me outside of Chem 14 CL. So she knew my work ethics, being in her class, but she knew me, like what I was passionate about, what I liked, what I disliked, because I would talk to her about that in office hours. And I promise you, professors are very like open and welcoming when it comes to like asking them about their life. And I think that's how you can start interacting with them if you want to have them know more about you outside of the scope of schoolwork. I know a lot of students also go to, well, not a lot, like a little bit. There's a few students who would go to office hours just to ask questions pertaining to homework assignments or like final exam or midterms or whatever it is. And they don't really like communicate with the professor, which is totally fine. But if you are actually seeking a letter of recommendation from somebody, you really want to make sure that they know you on a personal level, and also they know you as a student, because that's going to make for a very strong letter of recommendation versus if a professor just knows you as a student, it's going to be a very generic, most likely very similar to another letter of recommendation, which is not really going to make you stand out as an individual. But yes, I'm still in contact with her till this day.
Thank you for that. Alessio, would you like to chime in?
Of course. So the person that I actually asked for my letter of recommendation was like a mentor that I got my freshman year at UF. Like the first week of school, through one of the listservs that I was in, I received a message about this opportunity called the University Multicultural Mentorship Program. So this was meant for a lot of first generation students like myself that also felt a bit underrepresented on campus, that they would be assigned a faculty mentor that could kind of help guide them throughout these 4 years of undergrad and kind of make the most out of the opportunities that there were available. So I met with this mentor, and he wasn't a professor, or he worked at actually the university's Disability Resource Center. But regardless of the fact that he wasn't a professor, I was still able to develop a really solid connection with him. And after a couple of conversations, we would just chat about random things, but then sometimes we would get into some more personal discussions. And I was able to open up to him about my background, how I was from Paraguay and I immigrated to the United States, and how, I have faced certain obstacles throughout my life. And then one day, after I had heard about SHPEP and I realized like I wanted to apply, I scheduled another meeting with him and I brought it up to him at the meeting. And he said that he would be more than happy to write me the letter of recommendation for it, given that he understood my background and why it is that I wanted to apply to a program like this one. So I guess the main takeaway from that is try your best to get your letter of recommendation from someone that knows you, just to echo what Simran has said already, right? You don't want to, again, say for example, you have your general chemistry professor, they don't know your name, you've never gone to their office hours, and you're one of 400 students sitting in that lecture hall. If you email that professor asking them to write you a letter of recommendation, and they don't even know who you are, chances are that they'll say no, first off. Second, if they do say yes, it's not going to be a letter of recommendation with a lot of substance to it. It's just going to be very shallow, very superficial, where the professor can say, oh, this so-and-so student is doing good in my class, if that happens to be your case, but there's really not much else that they can say. So again, even if you're a freshman and you want to apply to SHPEP, don't be discouraged. Go to office hours, develop a relationship with your professor or your pre-health advisor even. Remember, it doesn't have to be one of your professors. So put in the time to develop those relationships and you'll see how far they can take you.
Thanks for that, Alessio. And you know what? I'd like to just round this out and kind of end this off. And I'd like to hear some final thoughts from each of you. Let me know like a last piece of advice that you would give applicants looking to apply this cycle. I'll start with Simran and work our way around.
Okay, what advice? I would say like when it comes to applying, for sure, be true to yourself. Write things that you actually have done. I know a lot of people like make up things because they want to. I promise you that will be shown within your application. So make sure that you're true to yourself. Another thing, as I think we've mentioned over and over again, do not be as involved, like overly involved in things. Really stick to like what you're passionate about when, as a college student, because I know it can be hard with imposter syndrome. And a third advice I would give is have a work-life balance. Don't make the mistake that I did. Do not socialize. Make sure that you do have time to spare for your friends, but also don't overly do it as well, where you're going out often and not really prioritizing your academics and like whatever you're involved in. And I think another one I also wanted to mention is that you don't have to check everything on the box. Actually it's better if you don't check off everything, because that shows that you're like probably like going through the list. And what I mean by that is like for medical school, right? They expect you to have some sort of research done, have like shadowing experience, have volunteer experience, take certain classes, which obviously you have to do that. But if you don't have something published for research, you will be fine, I promise you. I know a lot of people like get my friends who are applying, they're like, well, Simran, we don't have something like published, like I don't think I'm going to be qualified for so and so medical school. And it's not all of, you don't have to have something published if you don't have something published, if you just show them that you were involved in something else. So for instance, like if I'm going to be applying, which I will be soon, I think my theme is going to be, and you want to have like some sense, like some sort of theme too as well. I think I will not be focusing on research, even though I have done research. I don't think that's what like my entire undergraduate journey was about. I would for sure focus more on community service, because I was involved in so many orgs and I was involved in so many programs where I did contribute back to the community here at UCLA with vulnerable populations, with my own community, the Sikh community. So I've done a lot of community service oriented work. And I think a lot of my responses to the application itself for medical school will be pertaining to that. So like things like that, you want to really think about you as an individual and think about like, what you did throughout your undergraduate years. And I know you probably are very young right now, you're not fourth years like me, but it's never too late to like start thinking about like, what you've been doing, as an undergraduate student.
Thanks for that, Simran. Alessio?
So the main thing I'll say with regards to SHPEP application is be genuine, be yourself. Make sure that whoever is reading your application will be able to connect with you based off what you've written on that personal statement. This is one of the most important components of your applications. So don't just draft it the night before and then submit it. No. Draft it, have a couple people proofread it for you, make sure that the story and the narrative that you've presented is cohesive. They make sure there's no grammar errors either. This is something that you want to professionally have or professionally present to whoever's reading it. And also try to, like, if you do get accepted into the program, try to keep an open mind, go in just thinking that you'll learn as much as you can. Don't go in set on a medical pathway and you're like, medicine is the only thing I want to learn about in SHPEP and I don't care about any of the other pathways. Because as I mentioned before, you might surprise yourself on what you learn with regards to the other medical or the other healthcare professions that are out there. So be genuine, keep an open mind, and definitely have others proofread your personal statement because it'll be very, very helpful.
Thanks for that. Omar, would you like to round us out?
Yeah, I would just like to add to what my friend Simran and Alicia said. So I think it's important in the application to be yourself, write about your personal experiences when you write about activities on server, describe what you personally did in your personal statement, and let the committee see you as a person. Let them hear your personal story and evaluate your file based on your personal experiences. I think that's crucial to have in this SHPEP application, in grad school applications. Keep that principle, and good luck in your and the rest of your pre-health career.
Yeah, thank you. And as far as on my end, I highly recommend that throughout our application season, you attend our webinars. Next month, we'll be hosting a webinar going over the nuts and bolts of our application. We'll have another webinar to kind of hear from our program sites directly and, throughout the application season, we'll be hosting power hours with our ambassadors to kind of, host like an application tips and application help hotline, so to speak. So definitely stay tuned for those invites. And, I think that's it. I'd like to say a good night to everyone. If you're on the West Coast, good afternoon, and have the wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.